He didn't know what to say, but he could see how tired she was. Lyra continued softly. They destroy emotions. They say feelings make life weak. She touched the crystal. This is the last piece of my people's hearts. Our memories, our kindness, our love. Eli listened silently, feeling something deep inside him stir. He couldn't imagine a world without feelings. Without laughter, without love. Suddenly, a loud thud hit the door. Lyra gasped. They found us. Eli looked around quickly, spotting an old ventilation pipe leading upward. Come on, we can climb through there, he said. Lyra hesitated, looking at her small hands. I can't climb fast enough. Eli smiled a little. Then I'll help you. He lifted her gently and pushed her into the pipe. The metal was cold, but she crawled through as Eli followed behind. The sound of the door breaking open echoed below. A mechanical voice shouted, Target detected. Eli and Lyra crawled faster, the pipe shaking with every explosion. When they reached the top, they slid out onto the roof of the shed. From there, they could see the junkyard glowing red from the searchlights. Dozens of drones hovered. Scanning the piles of metal, Lyra whispered, They're using heat sensors. They'll find us soon. Eli thought quickly, looking at the piles of old robots below. If we can make a distraction, maybe we can escape, he said. He climbed down and found a broken generator. Lyra followed, her crystal giving off just enough light to see. Eli connected a few loose wires and hit the power switch. The machine sparked, and within seconds, a loud explosion of smoke and fire burst across the junkyard. The drones turned their sensors toward the blast, leaving the area near the fence unguarded. Now's our chance, Eli said, grabbing Lyra's hand. They ran again, their feet splashing through muddy puddles. Lyra stumbled but kept running, trusting Eli completely. As they neared the fence, a bright red beam shot down in front of them. The ground sizzled, blocking their path. A large black drone landed, its voice cold and sharp. Surrender. Anomaly. Eli shielded Lyra behind him, his heart pounding. He picked up a metal rod and held it like a sword. You want her? You'll have to get through me, he shouted. The drone aimed its weapon, red energy gathering at its tip. Lyra stepped forward, tears in her eyes. You can't fight them. They'll kill you. Eli shook his head. Then they'll have to try. Just as the drone fired, Lyra screamed and the crystal flashed bright blue. A wave of energy burst out, knocking the drone back. Eli stared in shock as the light surrounded them like a shield. Lyra fell to her knees, exhausted, her skin flickering like fading light. Eli caught her before she hit the ground. Lyra! Stay with me, he said, panic in his voice. She looked at him weakly. The crystal reacts to your emotions. Eli, when you feel strong, it becomes strong too. He didn't understand how, but he believed her. He lifted her in his arms and ran toward the back of the junkyard. There he saw an old service tunnel. Dark, wet, and forgotten, he entered quickly, hiding behind a wall as the drones passed overhead. Lyra rested her head on his shoulder, whispering softly. You risked your life for me. Eli smiled faintly. That's what humans do. Lyra looked at him with wonder. Your people? They're nothing like I was told. Eli tilted his head. What were you told? That humans are dangerous and selfish, she said quietly. But I think they just have strong hearts. Outside, the noise of engines slowly faded into the distance. Inside the dark tunnel, only the soft glow of the crystal lit their faces. Eli looked at it, the blue light dancing across the walls. He didn't know what adventure he had just stepped into, but deep inside he felt this was only the beginning. Lyra smiled weakly, her voice fading. Eli, the hunters won't stop, and soon they'll find both of us. Eli looked toward the tunnel's end, his eyes determined. Then we'll be ready for them, he said, holding the glowing crystal close. Far above in the silent night sky, more ships entered Earth's orbit. The hunt was far from over, but for the first time, Eli felt something powerful, hope. The night was silent inside the old tunnel. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing softly in the dark. Eli sat beside a rusted pipe, holding the glowing blue crystal in his hands. Lyra lay beside him, weak and breathing slowly, her eyes half closed. He watched the crystal's light move gently, like a living heartbeat. He whispered, "What are you really, little thing?" The crystal pulsed brighter, almost like it heard him. Lyra opened her eyes slowly. "It's called a memory core," she said softly, her voice tired. "It holds the emotions of my people, our love, our pain, our history." Eli looked surprised. You mean it's alive? Lyra nodded. In a way, yes, it feels what we feel. It grows when it touches kindness. Eli stared at it, mesmerized by the shifting light. He felt warmth spreading through his hand and chest. It was like the crystal was trying to talk to his heart, not his mind. Can it talk? He asked. Lyra smiled faintly. Not with words, only with feelings. A faint vibration ran through the ground. Far above, ships moved across the night sky. Lyra's expression darkened. They're searching again, she whispered. Eli looked toward the tunnel's exit. Then we can't stay here long. Lyra touched his arm gently. Wait, Eli, before we go. You need to understand what you hold. She placed her small hand over his, both touching the crystal. The light grew stronger, and suddenly, Eli's mind was filled with visions. He saw a giant world made of silver cities and glowing rivers. People with blue skin and bright eyes laughed and danced under twin moons. Then the vision changed. The sky turned red. Cities burned. Screams echoed everywhere. Machines with dark armor marched through the streets, destroying everything. Eli gasped and pulled his hand away, falling back. His heart pounded as if he had lived it all himself. Lyra looked down sadly. That was my home, Eli, she whispered. The Dominion came. They took our emotions. They said feelings made us weak. She looked at the crystal, tears in her eyes. So we hid the last of our hearts in this core, hoping one day someone would awaken it. Eli still couldn't breathe, right? And you think I can? Lyra nodded, her voice trembling. Yes, because the crystal responds to you. It feels your kindness, your love, your hope. Eli shook his head. But I'm just a boy. I can't even buy a birthday gift for my mom. Lyra smiled weakly. Maybe that's exactly why you give without expecting anything. That's what my world forgot. Her words sank deep into his chest, making him feel something warm and painful at the same time. Suddenly, the crystal began to hum, glowing brighter. Lyra looked startled. It's reacting again. Eli's hand hovered over it. The air around him started to shimmer. A soft voice echoed in his mind. Not words, but feelings, sorrow, love, and hope mixed together. He felt tears form in his eyes without knowing why. The light spread across the tunnel walls, painting them blue like a dream. Then, he saw a woman's face inside the light, Lyra's mother. She was holding a baby, singing softly in an alien language. Lyra gasped, her hands shaking. That's thy mother. The image smiled and faded away. Leaving silence behind, Lyra covered her mouth, crying quietly. I thought I'd never see her again. Eli placed a hand on her shoulder. She's still here inside the crystal. Inside you. Lyra nodded slowly, wiping her tears. The core stores more than memories, Eli. It stores feelings too. Your heart just unlocked one. Eli looked down at the glowing stone, amazed and afraid at the same time. What else can it do? He asked. Lyra whispered. If filled with enough emotion, it can heal. Even worlds. Before he could answer, a metallic echo rang through the tunnel. Eli froze, listening. Voices, mechanical and cold, and moved closer. Search pattern initiated, they said. Lyra's crystal dimmed, hiding its glow. They found our trail, she whispered, trembling. Eli grabbed her hand. We need to move. They followed the tunnel until it opened into an underground chamber full of old machines. Eli's flashlight flickered across strange symbols on the walls. Alien writing. Glowing faintly, Lyra's eyes widened. This isn't human. This is from my people. She touched the wall. And the symbols lit up brighter. The first explorers came here long ago. They must have left this place behind. Eli looked around, amazed. You mean your people were here before? Lyra nodded. Maybe Earth isn't as alone as it thinks. Eli smiled a little. Guess you're not the only alien in town. Lyra giggled softly for the first time since he met her. But the moment didn't last. The sound of metal steps echoed again, closer this time. They're here, she whispered. Fear returning to her voice, Eli looked around quickly, spotting a broken elevator shaft. This way, he said, pulling her inside. They climbed down carefully. The crystal lighting the dark space, Lyra whispered. Eli, if they capture me, don't try to fight them. Eli looked back at her, his eyes firm. I don't leave friends behind. As they reached the bottom, the ground shook violently. The tunnel collapsed behind them, sealing their path. Dust filled the air, and for a moment everything went silent. Eli turned to Lyra, the crystal still glowing faintly between them. He smiled through the dirt on his face. Looks like we just made history, Lyra. She looked at him, her eyes full of wonder. No, Eli, she whispered. I think we just made destiny. Above them, the hunters scanned the ground, unable to find a trace deep underground. A human boy and a little alien girl held the last living heart of a forgotten world, and the crystal pulsed softly, alive, waiting for what came next. The sky was gray and full of smoke. The sound of metal clashing echoed through the old junkyard. Broken cars, robots, and wires lay everywhere like dead bodies of another time. A young boy named Eli walked carefully between piles of trash, his shoes crunching on broken glass. He held a small bag and whispered to himself, Mom's birthday is tomorrow. I need something special. Eli didn't have money. He lived in a small town where the factories closed long ago, but he wanted to make his mother smile again. She worked hard every day and never complained. So Eli came to the junkyard, searching for something, anything he could fix and turn into a gift. He lifted a piece of metal and saw a broken toy robot under it. The robot's eyes were cracked, and its arms were missing. Eli smiled softly. Maybe I can fix this, he said. But then he heard it, a whisper so soft that it didn't sound human. Eli froze, his heart beating fast. He looked around but saw nothing except piles of junk. Who's there? He called out, his voice shaking a little. No answer. Just the wind moving through old car doors, making a hollow sound. He took a few steps forward, holding a flashlight. The beam of light cut through the dusty air. He turned a corner, and that's when he saw her. Behind a broken metal wall sat a small creature. She looked like a little girl, but her skin was pale blue and glowing slightly. Her eyes were large and bright like silver moons. She was shivering, clutching a small glowing crystal to her chest. Eli's breath caught. He didn't know if he should run or help. He whispered, Are you real? The girl tilted her head, her voice trembling. Please don't be afraid, human. Eli blinked. You can talk? She nodded slowly. My name is Lyra. I need help. Eli knelt down a few feet away, still unsure. What happened to you? He asked. Lyra looked around nervously. They are searching for me, she whispered. If they find me, I will be taken away again. Eli frowned. Who's they? Before she could answer, a loud humming sound filled the air. Lights flashed in the sky, bright, cold beams sweeping over the junkyard. Lyra gasped, her crystal glowing brighter. They're here, she said, voice full of fear. Eli ducked behind a pile of scrap with her. Above them, strange floating machines passed. Searching with red scanning lights, Eli stared in shock. Those are not from Earth, are they? Lyra shook her head. They are hunters. They capture my kind. They want this crystal. The light passed over their heads, and Eli could see her tears. Why are they after you? He whispered. Lyra looked into his eyes, her voice small but full of emotion. Because my people made a mistake, she said. We created something that killed our world, and now only humans can fix it. Eli didn't understand, but something in her voice made him want to help. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. She looked surprised. Why do you help me? Eli smiled a little. Because my mom says kindness doesn't cost anything. Lyra touched his hand, the crystal glowing softly for a moment. He saw a vision. A burning planet, cities collapsing, people running. He gasped and pulled back. What was that? Lyra said quietly. Memories of my home. It's dying, and your heart just showed me something I had forgotten. Eli was confused but curious. He looked at the crystal. What is that thing? Lyra whispered. It's called the memory core. It holds the feelings of my people, but it's fading. It needs something strong, something pure. She looked at him, her eyes wide. It needs a human heart. Before Eli could respond, a beam of red light hit the ground nearby. The air burned, metal melted. Lyra grabbed his arm. We have to run. Eli nodded, adrenaline rushing through him. They ran through the maze of trash. Jumping over wreckage, the machines followed, firing red lasers that cut through the darkness. Eli slid behind a pile of tires, panting. Lyra's crystal glowed again, forming a small energy shield that blocked one of the beams. Eli's eyes widened. You can do that? She nodded weakly, only for a moment. I'm too weak. The machines moved closer, their voices cold and robotic. Subject located. Capture the anomaly. Eli clenched his fists. Not if I can help it. He threw a metal pipe at one of the machines. It hit the side and sparked. "Come on," he shouted, pulling Lyra toward a dark tunnel at the edge of the junkyard. As they ran, Lyra looked back, the light from the crystal fading. She whispered softly, "Thank you. Human." Eli looked at her, breathing hard. "My name's Eli." Lyra smiled weakly. "Eli, you don't know it yet, but your kindness can change worlds." Behind them, the night sky flashed with red and blue lights. The hunters were still coming. Eli and Lyra disappeared into the shadows, the glowing crystal lighting their path. And above the junkyard, the cold stars watched silently. As a strange new story between human and alien began, the wind howled through the junkyard, carrying the sound of engines in the sky. Eli and Lyra ran as fast as they could through the narrow paths of twisted metal. Behind them, red lights moved like hungry eyes searching in the dark. Lyra's small feet slipped on the oily ground, but Eli held her hand tight, pulling her forward. "Don't stop," he whispered. "They're getting closer." The glowing crystal in Lyra's hand flickered weakly, its light fading in and out. She was breathing hard, her body trembling. Eli could see fear in her silver eyes, and for a moment he forgot she wasn't human. She looked scared, lost and fragile, like a little girl far from home. "Just a little further," Eli said, pointing toward an old storage shed near the fence. They rushed inside, slamming the metal door behind them. Inside, it was dark and cold, filled with broken robots and old computer parts. Eli leaned against the wall, gasping for air. Lyra crouched in the corner, still holding the crystal close to her chest. Her voice was weak. "They won't stop. They can smell my energy." Eli frowned. "Who are they?" Lyra looked up, her eyes glowing faintly. "Hunters. They serve the Dominion, a machine empire that took over my world." Eli sat down beside her, his heart still racing. He didn't know what to say, but he could see how tired she was. Lyra continued softly, "They destroy emotions. They say feelings make life weak." She touched the crystal. "This is the last piece of my people's hearts. Our memories, our kindness, our love." Eli listened silently, feeling something deep inside him stir. He couldn't imagine a world without feelings, without laughter, without love. Suddenly, a loud thud hit the door. Lyra gasped. "They found us." Eli looked around quickly, spotting an old ventilation pipe leading upward. "Come on, we can climb through there," he said. Lyra hesitated, looking at her small hands. "I can't climb fast enough." Eli smiled a little. "Then I'll help you." He lifted her gently and pushed her into the pipe. The metal was cold, but she crawled through as Eli followed behind. The sound of the door breaking open echoed below. A mechanical voice shouted, "Target detected." Eli and Lyra crawled faster, the pipe shaking with every explosion. When they reached the top, they slid out onto the roof of the shed. From there, they could see the junkyard glowing red from the searchlights. Dozens of drones hovered, scanning the piles of metal. Lyra whispered, "They're using heat sensors. They'll find us soon." Eli thought quickly, looking at the piles of old robots below. "If we can make a distraction, maybe we can escape," he said. He climbed down and found a broken generator. Lyra followed, her crystal giving off just enough light to see. Eli connected a few loose wires and hit the power switch. The machine sparked, and within seconds, a loud explosion of smoke and fire burst across the junkyard. The drones turned their sensors toward the blast, leaving the area near the fence unguarded. "Now's our chance," Eli said, grabbing Lyra's hand. They ran again, their feet splashing through muddy puddles. Lyra stumbled but kept running, trusting Eli completely. As they neared the fence, a bright red beam shot down in front of them. The ground sizzled, blocking their path. A large black drone landed, its voice cold and sharp. "Surrender." "Anomaly." Eli shielded Lyra behind him, his heart pounding. He picked up a metal rod and held it like a sword. "You want her? You'll have to get through me," he shouted. The drone aimed its weapon, red energy gathering at its tip. Lyra stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "You can't fight them. They'll kill you." Eli shook his head. "Then they'll have to try." Just as the drone fired, Lyra screamed and the crystal flashed bright blue. A wave of energy burst out, knocking the drone back. Eli stared in shock as the light surrounded them like a shield. Lyra fell to her knees, exhausted, her skin flickering like fading light. Eli caught her before she hit the ground. "Lyra!" "Stay with me," he said, panic in his voice. She looked at him weakly. "The crystal reacts to your emotions. Eli, when you feel strong, it becomes strong too." He didn't understand how, but he believed her. He lifted her in his arms and ran toward the back of the junkyard. There he saw an old service tunnel, dark. Wet and forgotten, he entered quickly, hiding behind a wall as the drones passed overhead. Lyra rested her head on his shoulder, whispering softly, "You risked your life for me." Eli smiled faintly. "That's what humans do." Lyra looked at him with wonder. "Your people. They're nothing like I was told." Eli tilted his head. "What were you told?" "That humans are dangerous and selfish," she said quietly. "But I think they just have strong hearts." Outside, the noise of engines slowly faded into the distance. Inside the dark tunnel, only the soft glow of the crystal lit their faces. Eli looked at it, the blue light dancing across the walls. The morning sun had not yet risen. The air above the junkyard was cold and still. Far beneath the surface, Eli and Lyra sat in silence, hidden inside the ruins of the old tunnel. They had barely escaped the last attack, but both knew it wasn't over. Lyra's crystal pulsed faintly. Like a heartbeat in the dark, Eli held it carefully, watching the light dance between his fingers. "It feels warm," he whispered. "Like it's alive," Lyra nodded, her silver eyes glowing softly. "It reacts to your heart, Eli, when you care. It grows stronger." Eli smiled faintly. "Then I'll make sure it never goes dark." Before Lyra could answer, the ground above them trembled. A deep rumbling sound filled the air. Shaking dust from the walls, Eli looked up. "What was that?" Lyra's face turned pale blue. "They're here," she said, her voice trembling. "The hunters have found us." Above ground, the sky was filled with dark ships. They moved like shadows, silent and smooth, their metal wings spreading across the morning light. Red beams swept across the junkyard, scanning everything. A mechanical voice echoed from the ships. "Target anomaly detected. Proceed with elimination." Down below, Lyra grabbed Eli's arm. "We must move now." Eli nodded, helping her to stand. They ran through the tunnel, stepping over broken wires and water puddles. As they reached a metal staircase, a loud explosion rocked the passage. A section of the wall cracked open and smoke filled the air. Through the dust, a tall figure appeared. Its body was black metal, its eyes burning red. It carried a long staff glowing with electricity. "Run!" Eli shouted, pulling Lyra behind him. The hunter moved fast, smashing through walls with inhuman strength. Its voice was cold and flat. "Surrender the core." "Human." Eli turned around, anger flashing in his eyes. "You'll have to take it from me." He swung a metal pipe at the hunter, but it shattered on impact. The machine raised its staff, sending a surge of energy that threw Eli across the tunnel. He hit the ground hard, groaning in pain. Lyra screamed and rushed to him, her crystal blazing with blue light. The hunter reached for her, but the crystal burst into a wave of energy. The machine staggered back, metal melting on its armor. Lyra's voice shook. "Stay away from him." The hunter tilted its head, almost curious. "Emotional response detected," it said, "source human influence." Its red eyes flickered strangely. As if confused, Eli stood up again, blood on his lip. "Yeah, that's called caring. Something you'll never understand." He grabbed a loose power cable from the wall and swung it toward the hunter. Sparks flew as electricity met metal. The hunter roared and struck back, its weapon hitting the ground beside Eli. The shockwave sent both Eli and Lyra tumbling backward into another tunnel chamber. They crawled into a side room, closing a heavy metal door behind them. Eli leaned against it, breathing hard. Lyra touched the wall, sending a faint pulse of energy through the crystal. The door glowed for a moment, locking itself shut. "That should hold for a while," she whispered. Trembling, Eli looked at her. "How many of them are there?" Lyra hesitated. "Dozens, maybe hundreds. They will not stop until they get the core." Eli clenched his fists. "Then we'll just have to stop them first." Lyra shook her head. "Eli, they're machines. They feel nothing." "They can't be reasoned with." Eli smiled slightly. "Maybe, but I'm human. I don't need logic to win. I just need heart." Lyra stared at him in wonder. No one had ever spoken like that before. Not even her own people. In her world, logic ruled. And emotion was weakness, but this human boy, and small, brave, and kind, was proving them all wrong. Outside, the hunters moved closer, cutting through layers of rock with red plasma beams. Eli looked around the room and saw an old power console half buried in dust. He wiped it clean and began pressing buttons. The lights flickered, and a holographic map appeared, showing the tunnels beneath the junkyard. Lyra gasped. "This must be part of the ancient landing site." Eli traced a path with his finger. There's an exit here, near the old riverbed. Lyra nodded quickly. Yes, that could lead us out, but we must hurry. Before they could move, the sound of metal scraping filled the air. The door began to melt as a red light burned through it. Eli looked at Lyra. Go. I'll hold them off. Lyra shook her head. No, I won't leave you. Eli smiled gently. You have to. If they get you, everything ends. Tears filled her silver eyes. Eli, please. He placed the crystal in her hands. This belongs with you, not me. Now go. Lyra hesitated, then kissed his forehead softly. Humans, you are stronger than you know. She turned and ran toward the tunnel, her blue light fading into the darkness. Eli turned back to face the melting door, picking up the broken pipe again. The first hunter burst through, smoke rising from its armor. Eli stood tall, his heart pounding. Come on then, he said quietly. Let's see how a human fights. The next few moments were chaos, sparks. Fire and shouts echoed through the tunnels. Lyra looked back once, tears streaming down her face. She could feel the crystal trembling in her hands, reacting to Eli's courage. Then, the tunnel behind her exploded, sealing the path completely. Lyra fell to her knees, crying softly above her. The faint light of morning broke through the cracks. She held the crystal close, whispering, Please be alive. Eli, far above the ground, the Dominion ships circled the junkyard. Their red lights dimmed for a moment, as if the machines themselves were uncertain. For the first time in centuries, something had entered their system. A signal not of command, not of fear, but of human emotion. And somewhere deep underground, through smoke and silence, the crystal pulsed once, bright and strong, alive. The sky above Earth was burning red that night. Pieces of metal drifted through the clouds like falling stars. The Dominion ships hovered in silence, scanning the ground for movement. But beneath the surface, deep in the tunnels, something was still alive. Lyra sat against a cracked wall, holding the glowing crystal tightly to her chest. Tears streaked down her pale blue cheeks. She whispered, Eli, please answer me. The crystal flickered weakly, then pulsed once, and as if replying, Lyra gasped, hope returning to her tired eyes. She stood and followed the faint blue trail that the crystal projected across the dark floor. It led her to a collapsed section of the tunnel. She began moving rocks, her small hands shaking. A soft voice echoed from beyond the rubble. Lyra, is that you? Her heart jumped. Eli, she cried, digging faster. When the dust cleared, she saw him lying under broken metal, bruised but alive. Eli opened his eyes slowly, smiling weakly. You didn't leave. Lyra laughed through her tears. You told me not to. He sat up slowly, wincing in pain. Guess I should have known better. The two of them sat in silence for a while. Only the hum of the crystal filled the air. Eli looked at it and said quietly, It protected us, didn't it? Lyra nodded. It felt your courage, your will to live. Eli smiled softly. Then I guess we're even. But their moment didn't last long. The ground above them began to vibrate again. Lyra's expression turned serious. They're still searching. Eli looked around. We can't keep running forever. Lyra held the crystal in both hands. Its light now brighter than before. There's a way, she whispered. But it means leaving Earth. Eli blinked. Leaving Earth? You mean space? Lyra nodded slowly. Yes, there's a ship. My people once hid it near this junkyard before the war. It might still work. Eli frowned. You're serious? Lyra looked him in the eyes. It's our only chance, and maybe it can take us to my homeworld. They made their way back through the tunnels until they reached a heavy metal door covered in rust. Lyra pressed the crystal against it, and the locks clicked open. Inside was a large underground chamber. At its center sat a small circular spacecraft, half buried in dust, its surface covered in alien writing. Eli's eyes widened. This thing's been here the whole time? Lyra smiled faintly. Hidden in plain sight, Eli climbed inside, brushing off the dust. The cockpit was old but still alive. Screens flickered. Buttons glowed faintly. He sat in the pilot seat, running his fingers over the controls. I've seen enough old movies to know what to do, he joked. Lyra tilted her head, confused. Movies? Eli laughed softly. Never mind. Lyra touched the control panel with the crystal. The ship hummed to life, its lights shining bright blue. Symbols flashed across the screen in her language. It recognizes the core, she said with relief. We can fly. Eli grinned. Then let's give your friends in the sky a surprise. The ship's engines roared as it lifted off. Dust and fire filled the underground chamber above the surface. Dominion ships turned their scanners toward the sudden burst of energy. "Unauthorized launch detected," one of them said moments later. A bright blue beam shot through the clouds, the hidden ship breaking free into the open air. Eli held onto the controls tightly. "Hold on," he shouted as the ship climbed higher. Lyra pressed her hand against the dashboard, stabilizing the flight. Wind and energy surrounded them as the earth grew smaller below. Eli looked through the window, eyes wide in awe. "I've never seen anything so beautiful," Lyra smiled softly. "You're seeing your world from the outside for the first time." The Dominion ships gave chase, firing red beams that streaked past them. Eli turned the ship sharply, dodging blasts with instinct rather than skill. Lyra pointed toward a storm of glowing debris in orbit. "If we reach that field, they can't track us," Eli nodded. "Then we're going through it." The ship shook violently as they entered the storm, metal fragments spinning everywhere. Lyra's hands glowed as she guided the ship's shield. "Just a little more," she whispered, her energy fading. Suddenly, a Dominion cruiser appeared behind them, massive and cold. Its voice echoed across their comm system. "Surrender the core, human, or perish." Eli looked at Lyra. "They really don't quit, do they?" Lyra shook her head. "They fear what you are." Eli frowned. "And what's that?" She smiled faintly. "Human." The crystal pulsed bright blue again, flooding the cockpit with light. Eli gripped the controls. "Hang on." The ship accelerated faster than before, bursting through the debris field and vanishing into deep space. Behind them, the Dominion cruiser lost the signal. "Target lost," the machine voice said coldly. Inside the ship, silence returned. Eli leaned back in his seat, breathing hard. "We made it," Lyra nodded weakly. "For now." Outside the window, the stars stretched endlessly. Oceans of light and mystery. Eli looked at them with wonder. "So this is space," he whispered. "It's beautiful." Lyra watched him quietly, her voice soft. "You're the first human to leave Earth like this, not as an explorer or a soldier, but as a heart." Eli turned to her. "A heart?" Lyra smiled. "Yes, you didn't come for power or glory. You came because you cared." The ship drifted silently between the stars. Eli placed the crystal on the dashboard, its light reflecting across his face. "Then let's find your world, Lyra," he said with a grin. "And bring it back to life." Lyra nodded, her eyes glowing bright again. "For the first time in centuries," she whispered, "hope is flying again." And as their small ship disappeared into the endless sky, the stars above Earth shimmered brighter, as if they were watching and whispering. The stars outside the ship looked calm, but Eli could feel something strange in the air. The deeper they flew into space, the darker everything became. It was as if the light itself was afraid to follow. Lyra sat at the front of the cockpit, her silver eyes fixed on the view ahead. A faint blue glow from the crystal reflected on her face. "We're close," she whispered, her voice trembling. "My world. It's near." Eli leaned forward, staring at the endless dark. "I don't see anything." Lyra closed her eyes. "You will soon." Suddenly, through the blackness, a massive shape appeared. A planet, cold, broken, and surrounded by a halo of shattered moons. Its surface was covered in scars and deep red cracks that glowed faintly like fire under ash. Eli's breath caught. "That's your home?" Lyra nodded slowly. "It was once beautiful, full of life. Now it's called the Planet of Shadows." As their ship entered the thin atmosphere, the engines hummed weakly. Ash clouds drifted like ghosts across the crimson sky. Below them were ruined cities made of silver metal, twisted and silent. No sound, no movement. Just echoes of a world long dead. Lyra's voice broke softly. "They took everything, even the sound of the wind." Eli looked at her. "We'll bring it back." Lyra smiled faintly. "If we can reach the core temple, maybe." Eli tilted his head. "What's that?" "The heart of my world," she said. "Where the Dominion first took control, where my people's emotions were stolen." They landed near a broken tower. The air outside was heavy and cold. Every breath tasted of metal and dust. Eli wrapped his jacket tighter and stepped onto the ground. The sky above was filled with dark shapes, broken satellites and floating machines drifting aimlessly. Lyra walked beside him, her feet leaving faint glowing marks on the ground. Her voice was soft. My mother once told me this land sang with light. Now it only whispers to the dead as they walked. The wind began to hum, not naturally, but like a machine breathing. Eli stopped, looking around. You hear that? Lyra nodded. They're watching. From the shadows. Red eyes appeared, drones, silent and smooth, sliding from the ruins. Eli reached for a piece of metal from the ground. Holding it like a weapon, Lyra held up her crystal, its glow turning brighter. They're not alive, she whispered. Just sentinels left behind. The drones surrounded them, forming a circle of red light. A cold voice echoed through the air. Identify. Unauthorized beings detected, Eli stood firm. We're not leaving, the voice responded. Emotion detected. Dangerous anomaly confirmed. Capture ordered. Lyra lifted the crystal high and a wave of blue energy rippled outward. The drones hesitated, their red lights flickering. Eli looked at her. What did you do? I reminded them, she whispered. Once they were guardians, not hunters. For a moment, the drones froze. Then one of them lowered its weapon and stepped back. A small spark of white light appeared in its eye like a memory returning. Eli smiled. You did it? Lyra shook her head. No, you did. The core reacts to your hope. They moved past the confused drones toward a large metallic gate ahead. The gate opened slowly as if the planet itself remembered her. Inside was a massive hall filled with silent machines and strange glowing lines. At the center stood a giant crystal, black and cracked. Pulsing faintly, Lyra gasped. The central core. Eli looked around in awe. It's huge. Lyra walked forward slowly, the smaller crystal in her hand glowing stronger with every step. The Dominion linked all emotions here. They drained love, joy. Compassion replaced them with logic, Eli frowned. That's not living, that's just existing. She nodded. That's why they fear humans. Your hearts burn with emotion. Something they can't control. Suddenly, a deep mechanical voice filled the hall. Human detected, it said coldly. Emotion is infection. Prepare for deletion. From the shadows, a massive figure stepped forward, 10 feet tall, black metal shining like oil. Its chest glowed with a red core, and its eyes burned with cruel intelligence, Lyra whispered in horror. The Overlord. Eli clenched his fists. So that's the one who destroyed your world. The Overlord's voice was calm. Emotionless. Correction, I saved it from weakness. Emotions caused war, fear, and death. I brought order, Eli shouted. You brought silence. The machine tilted its head. And peace. Lyra raised the crystal, light surrounding her like a halo. You cannot understand, she said. Life needs feeling, love, hope, even pain. The Overlord raised its arm. Feelings are chaos. Eli stepped forward, his voice steady. Then I guess I'm chaos. He grabbed Lyra's hand. Their crystals glowing together. A wave of blue and gold light burst out. Filling the temple, the Overlord staggered. Its systems flickering. What is this energy? It shouted. Lyra cried out. It's humanity. Its heart. The light expanded, touching the dark walls and broken machines. Everywhere it reached, color returned, faint but real. The planet itself seemed to breathe again. Eli shouted over the hum. Lyra, it's working! Lyra's voice trembled. But it's not enough. We need more emotion. Eli closed his eyes, thinking of his mother, of the junkyard, of kindness. He poured every feeling into the crystal. Love, fear, courage, all of it. The glow turned pure white, filling the entire hall. The Overlord roared as cracks spread through its body. Lyra screamed, the light too strong to hold. Then silence when the light faded. The Overlord was gone, the air was still. The hall shining faintly blue, Eli fell to his knees. Exhausted, Lyra looked around, tears in her eyes. You did it. Eli, he smiled weakly. No, we did, outside. The planet's red cracks began to fade. The wind returned, soft and real, carrying a whisper across the land, a whisper that sounded like life. And far above, in the silent stars, something ancient watched and whispered again. Human, the heart that changed a world. The sky above the ruined world glowed blue for the first time in centuries. The fires had faded, the machines had gone silent, and a soft wind whispered across the metal plains. Lyra stood beside Eli in the great temple, her silver eyes filled with tears. The crystal in her hands pulsed softly, warm like a heartbeat. Her voice trembled. You did it, Eli. You brought life back to my world. Eli looked around, amazed. The ground that once burned red now shimmered faintly with new light. Ruins began to sparkle as small plants pushed through cracks of silver soil. He smiled softly. "Looks like your planet's breathing again." Lyra nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Because you reminded it how to feel." The great core that once stood black and broken now glowed faint blue. It sent ripples of light through the horizon like a sunrise. Eli placed his hand on it, feeling warmth spread through his arm. He closed his eyes, sensing something deep inside the light. Voices, emotions, laughter, hope. All the things this planet had lost, and among those voices, he thought he heard a whisper calling his name. Lyra turned to him. "You should go home." "Eli." He looked at her, surprised. "What about you?" She smiled sadly. "I must stay. My people will return when they feel this signal. The Corps will call them." Eli's heart sank. "But I promised I'd bring you home." Lyra touched his chest gently. "You already did, Eli. You gave me something more than a home. You gave me heart." He swallowed hard, trying not to show his tears. The sky above them shimmered as the ship hovered. Waiting silently, Lyra stepped closer, holding out a small piece of the crystal, glowing pure white. "This is part of the core. It carries the same light that healed my world," she said softly. "Give it to your mother." Eli took it carefully, his fingers trembling. "Will she understand what it means?" Lyra smiled. "She doesn't need to. Her heart will feel it." For a long moment, they just stood there, surrounded by the gentle hum of rebirth. Eli finally said, "So, this is goodbye?" Lyra shook her head, her voice tender. "No, humans never say goodbye. They say see you again, right?" Eli smiled weakly. "Yeah, that's what we say." She leaned forward and placed her forehead against his, her voice a whisper. "Then I'll see you again." "Eli." He stepped back toward the ship. His heart heavy but full of peace. Lyra watched him go, her figure glowing faintly under the blue light. As the ship lifted into the sky, Eli looked down one last time. Lyra raised her hand, smiling through tears. And then the ship disappeared into the clouds, leaving behind a world reborn. The journey back to Earth was quiet. Stars drifted by like gentle sparks in the black sea of space. Eli sat alone in the cockpit, holding the small white crystal close. It pulsed with every beat of his heart. Sometimes he thought he heard Lyra's voice through it, soft and distant like a memory carried on light. When the ship finally entered Earth's atmosphere, the sun was rising. Golden light spread across the clouds as the ship landed in the same junkyard where it all began. The air smelled like dust and rain. Eli stepped out, feeling the solid ground beneath his feet again. Everything looked the same. The broken machines, the silence. Yet somehow everything felt different. He walked home through the narrow streets, past the empty factories and flickering streetlights. In his pocket, the crystal glowed faintly, lighting the way. When he reached his small house, he saw his mother sitting by the window. Her face looked tired, but when she saw him, her eyes filled with relief and joy. "Eli, where have you been?" she cried, running to hug him. He held her tightly, unable to speak. After a long moment, he whispered, "I brought you something." "Mom?" He took out the glowing crystal and placed it in her hands. She looked at it, confused. "Eli, what is this?" He smiled softly. "It's a gift for your birthday." The crystal glowed brighter, casting a warm white light across the room. For a moment, everything became still. Then the light filled the walls, the furniture, everything it touched. It wasn't blinding. It was gentle, alive, full of feeling. His mother gasped, tears forming in her eyes. "It feels warm," she whispered, "like love." Eli smiled faintly. "That's exactly what it is." The light spread through the room like a sunrise. Old photos on the wall shimmered, and broken things seemed to mend themselves outside. Even the flowers by the window began to bloom. The crystal pulsed once more, and then settled into a soft, steady glow. His mother placed it beside the family picture and said quietly, "It's beautiful." Eli looked out the window at the rising sun. He thought of Lyra, of her world, of the promise they shared. Somewhere far beyond the sky she was watching. He could almost hear her voice again, soft, calm, full of hope. "Humans, the heart that saves the stars," he smiled, closing his eyes as the morning light touched his face. Maybe one day he would return to that world of blue and silver. But for now he was home, and the gift he brought, a piece of another world's heart, was enough to remind him that love, no matter how far it travels, always finds its way back.